Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session. It's a special one today as we'll be in conversation with the renowned author, Mr. Jeff Kinney. Jeff Kinney is the best-selling author of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series, which has sold over 290 million copies and been translated into 70 languages. Jeff is a six-time Nickelodeon Kids Choice Award winner for favorite book and has been named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. In this session, Dr. Ramesh Bijlani will be moderating the conversation with Jeff. Dr. Ramesh Bijlani is a prolific writer, an inspirational speaker, and a spiritual seeker residing at Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. So let's start with the session. Over to you, Dr. Bijlani, sir. And welcome, Jeff, sir. We are so glad and honored to have you with us.
Hello, it's so great to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Arinima, and thank you, Jeff, for being there. It's a rare honor for the Yes platform to have a writer of your caliber, and I'm sure that this will be yet one more of those millions of opportunities when you have shared your time to give some joy to children all over the world.
I appreciate that. I'm in the mountains of New Hampshire right now, and I am and there are weed whackers all around me and noises, so you might see me move today, but it's great to see you, and great to see you again. And I see my friend Priya is also on the line.
Hey Jeff, hi.
Hi Priya, how are you?
I'm good. We're all good.
Good. Hey, it's great to see you.
Hello, Jeff. Hello.
It's great to see you again. I'm going to go to where I know it's going to be quiet so that we can have a good session.
Yeah.
All right. It will be quieter indoors. Okay. I am ready. And it's nice to see you, Dr. Bijlani.
Jeff, you have been very much interested in education and have looked at it critically, as every intelligent and thinking individual does. The picture that you have portrayed of Greg Heffley is to some extent based on how you saw yourself as a school child. So would you like to share a little more about how you saw yourself and how your teachers or the school system or the peer group saw you when you were a school child?
Sure. I was a little bit of a mixed bag. I'm still trying to unpack who I was as a child. On the one hand, I think I was pretty smart. I felt like I was one of the better students, but I also had some obstacles. I had some challenges. I've always had attention deficit disorder. I've never been diagnosed, but I know from the checklists that I have these traits. And so it was always very difficult for me to pay attention in school. And one of the ways that I was able to do that was by drawing. So I drew a lot in school because it helped me to listen to my teachers. And still to this day, if I'm in a meeting or something that's a little bit boring, I might draw. So it's kind of so there was that. And then there's also the fact that when I was a kid, how did my teachers see me? I think in a way they wouldn't have really noticed me that much. I felt a little bit invisible. And I think that's part of being an author, is that you're sort of observing your world rather than living in it.
I'm glad that you were not diagnosed, because these days there's a tendency to label a child the moment you find the slightest evidence of something like ADHD. And the label sticks to the person for life. And
I think
also, I mean, your talent for drawing, I mean, that's again something which is not always appreciated. What one looks at is the skills in language and mathematics rather than in drawing, and of course, I mean, you've shown how much talents in other areas can accomplish.
Yes.
But all the same, I mean, when we criticize the system of education for all its faults, a person who never went to school is not able to accomplish much either.
That's
So, I mean,
right.
how do you look at the school system having contributed to your becoming a teacher? Was it because of the system, irrespective of the system, or in spite of the system through
Yeah.
which you went as a school child?
That's a great question. That's a very deep question. And I don't know the I don't know the answer to that. I do know that I am very privileged to be one of those people in the world that had a good education, a good public education. I didn't have to worry about putting food in my belly and things like that. I wasn't fighting for survival every day. So I had the opportunity. Um, that said, I would say a lot of kids didn't fully take advantage of their opportunity, including myself. I think I could have been a better student, or, I could have gone farther in a way. So I would say that, I just feel like I came from a position of privilege, just having the opportunity, is what my answer would be.
As a young person, to see your first published book is always a source of great joy. Would you like to share some memories about the first of your published books?
Oh, the first of my published books. I remember when I first was published, I got my book in the mail, and I just held it in my hands. I thought it was so amazing that I had my work validated by a publisher. And the book felt great. It looked great. It came out better than I would have expected it to. And my instinct was I just wanted to fill up a swimming pool with the books and swim around it, which is quite a strange thing to say. But it's just funny because publishing itself, what it is validation. It's somebody else saying your work is worthy of being put into print. And so I felt very lucky to have had that experience because I didn't think I would have that experience.
You have an extremely good sense of humor, and very often it is everyday situations in which you see humor, sometimes exaggerate them, and that exaggeration works as humor. Do you think this sense of humor can be cultivated, or is it just inborn?
That's something I ask myself all the time. I think that humor that some people, I think that humor is like a filter, right? Like my wife and I might have the same experiences in a day, but my brain might interpret it a little bit differently than hers. Like I'm always looking for the joke. And I think that part of it can't be taught. However, people who write humor for screenplays in Hollywood, they've developed a skill over time and they know the rhythms of humor. And so there is a clinical aspect to it, is that you can define it. For example, last night I was working with Disney, and we're going over our movie and trying to find the places where it could be funnier. The movie could be funnier, and we're all using very clinical terms, right? So I think there are those two sides. There's the natural or innate part of it, and then there's the clinical part of it. There was a writer in the US, I can't remember who it was, but he said, humor is like dissection. When you dissect it, you kill the thing. And I think that is true, is that if you overanalyze something, it could lose its humorous value.
And Jeff, the Diary of a Wimpy Kid overshadows your other work, but they have done so much work in other areas, including a website for games and so on. Would you like to talk about your pet project, the Plainville Square?
Oh, wow, you've done your homework. My pet project is we're redeveloping our downtown. I live in a town in Massachusetts that used to be a factory town, and it used to make jewelry. And that's very typical of Massachusetts. Most towns were built up around an industry, and now that industry has gone away. So we're left to live in this world that was created 100 or 150 years ago that doesn't apply to our day-to-day lives. And so what we're trying to do is to take all those old factories down that don't serve a purpose and to create community spaces so that we can gather as a community. Now, in the US right now, in the last 8 or so years, the United States has become very, very polarized. There really are two different realities in the United States right now, and with different fact patterns, and it just everything's so different. And so one of our objectives is to create spaces where people can get to know their neighbors. And so we're putting a pretty heavy investment into that project. We're using quite a lot of what we have to make this place that will outlive and outlast us.
Yes, I can see that. I mean, how much you invested in this project, both emotionally, physically, financially, and in every way. On one hand, trying to make use of the absence of industry to be more in tune with nature, to form a community, including spaces for the the markets, to which the farmers bring their produce.
That's right. Yes, that is a hope that we get to. The full vision will include a farmer's market, a stage where music can play, and a kind of a garden where you can have drinks or eat food.
Would you like to give a message to the teachers and parents how they could nurture the talents of their children better, particularly talent for writing and drawing?
Yeah, sure. Hi to all the parents and teachers out there. Thank you for taking care of our kids and for helping them become the people that they'll become. I would say that the best thing a parent can do for a child is to feed their interests, is to not try to shape them into a person that they're not meant to become, but to understand their children, to feed their interests, and to help them move along in life on a path that works for them. For example, let's say that your 9-year-old child is only interested in sharks. Like get your child books on sharks and magazines about sharks, or find documentaries about sharks. They'll move on to other things. But right now, it's important that they feel a feeling of success, that they feel a feeling of hunger in terms of feeding their interests. And what they'll do is they'll move on. I think one of the mistakes I made as a parent was I tried to introduce my kids to books that were too elevated for them. And they said, wow, well, if this is reading, then I don't like reading. And so we had to kind of switch gears and allow them to make their own discoveries.
Jeff, what would be your advice to children who are aspiring to become writers?
For children who are aspiring to become writers, well, you can't become a good writer unless you're a good reader. So I would say the first thing is to read as much as possible. As a parent, I always said yes to a book. If a kid of one of my 2 boys wanted a book, we always got it for them. And then to become a writer, I think you need to show your work to adults who will give you their honest opinion. Sometimes as kids, we create something and then we show it to our parents or our grandparents, and they're very encouraging, right? Which is important. But you also need to find people who will give you critical, criticism or constructive criticism to help you get better. I was lucky because when I was in the 5th grade, which was when I was probably about 11 years old, 10 or 11, I had a teacher that could tell that I was trying to develop my humor muscle. And she was pretty hard on me. She said, this worked, but this didn't. And she would explain to me why the jokes I was telling weren't working, or why, comedy acts we were putting together didn't exactly hit the mark. And I still remember her advice to this day, but she really encouraged me to get better.
Would you like to give some advice to children on how to handle both success and failure? Because rejection slips are also not uncommon for a writer to receive.
Yeah, I think everybody struggles with this. I don't know if even we as adults have great advice, because with failure comes pain. there's this parable I heard about a butterfly that is trapped in a cocoon, and a kid finds the butterfly, and they in the cocoon struggling to get out, and they use a knife and they cut the cocoon open to help the butterfly get out. But the butterfly, when it emerges, it can't fly because it's too weak, because it actually needed to develop the strength in escaping the cocoon. It helped it build its little butterfly muscles and to get stronger. And by cutting the cocoon open, the kid actually, in a way, killed the butterfly, because now the butterfly doesn't have the skills it needs. And as a parent, that parable really registered for me, with me, because I thought, wow, I'm the parent who's trying to cut that cocoon for my child. I'm the one who's trying to make it easy for my child, and when I see an obstacle, I want to make things easier for my child. It's very difficult as a caring parent to see your child struggle. I would say, in a way, the most successful parents are the ones with like too many kids to to watch, like 5 kids or 6 kids, because then those parents aren't on top of every kid, and the kids have to learn to be independent on their own. So I think, as a parent of 2 kids, my wife and I are pretty guilty of cutting the cocoon, and hopefully we haven't done too much damage to our children.
You said anyone who has to write should read a lot, and someone who reads a lot may one day end up writing.
Yes.
What was, do you have some memories of some books which you read as a child, which impressed you, books which you wanted to read again and again?
Yeah, there was an author named Judy Blume in the United States, who I don't know if her work reached India in a meaningful way, but she is very, very popular here in the States. And she wrote these stories about kids who were ordinary. The kids were a lot like me. Their stories were instantly relatable. I could see myself in the kids. They were funny. And what I really have come to realize since then is that the gift of those books was that it was like I was reading those books, it was like I was looking in a mirror, right? Is that I could see myself, and I took it for granted at the time that I could see my experiences in the pages of a book. I didn't realize at the time how validating that was, to see myself. And here in the United States, especially, we're going through a rash of foolish book banning. And it's usually a banning of books by people who are not white. There are people of color, there are people from other countries, there are people who have different, sort of different religions or love differently. And I think that the banning is extremely harmful, because now kids are not able to see themselves in books. And kids, especially if they're living outside of the mainstream or growing up a little bit differently, if they can't see themselves in the pages of a book, I think that can be very devastating. So I hope this country turns itself around, and we wise up, and we turn a page, metaphorically and almost literally, on this really shameful time we're going through here in the United States.
Would you like to give some message which would be applicable to all children, irrespective of whether they aspire or don't aspire to write?
Yeah, I would say to all children, I would really encourage you to start writing down your stories. I wish I kept a journal as a kid, but my stories, the Diary of a Wimpy Kid stories, come from my memories of my experience as a kid. And I wrote down every funny thing that happened to me as a kid in my 20s. So I was looking backwards and remembering. And and those are my stories. I own those stories. I sort of have the copyright to those stories in a way in my life. And my life wasn't very extraordinary. It was very average, but still lots of funny things happen. So I would say to kids out there, I would say write down the things that are happening to you that are funny, that are scary, that are special, that are meaningful, that are exciting, because one day you might use those stories. And I think it's also really important to become a good storyteller. Stories have this power. I've learned more and more the older I've gotten of how important a story is. So I would just say, record it, keep a diary. That's my advice to kids.
That's excellent advice, because irrespective of talent for writing, if you're writing something which is personal to you, which is based on your own experience, which comes from the heart, you are generally able to write quite well and gives you the joy of writing. And writing should primarily be for that joy rather than for getting published.
Yeah. And the act of writing is a scary thing. In the last few days, I wrote a whole screenplay in 4 days, which is the fastest I've ever written. But at first, I've got a blinking cursor and a blank page. And my feeling always going into writing is that I have to create something out of nothing. And when you're doing that, it can be very scary. So it's I have a lot of respect to anybody who's ever taken pen to paper, like my friend Priya, who's watching right now. She wrote a book, and probably two by now. And she took that risk, and that's a tough leap to make for anybody. And I have a respect for anybody that ever tries it.
We just have a few minutes left. I know you have another interview coming up very soon. May I ask you a funny question? You
Sure.
may or may not answer it. Is there some question which you wish people had asked you in an interview, but haven't, or at least not as often as you would like?
That's a good question. I would say one of the questions that people ask me very infrequently is, how do I come up with my jokes? And I have a specific answer to that. I use a systematic approach to creativity. It's called systematic inventive thinking. And the idea behind it is that you can be creative in a systematic way that isn't just waiting for divine intervention. And I'll give you a really quick example of it, is that there are two steps to systematic inventive thinking. One is that you list the components of a thing, right? So here I have glasses, and I would say, okay, well, the components are frames and lenses. That's it, just two components. So that wasn't hard. That didn't take any creativity. I just listed the things. And then what you do is you try subtraction, and you say, okay, well, what if you took away the lenses? What do you have? Do you have a product anybody would use? And I would say, well, frames, I don't know, what good would glasses without the lenses be? And actually, I can think of two ways you could use that. One is, if I was playing racquetball or a ball, a ball sport, I could thicken the frames, and then the ball wouldn't hit me in the eye. So that's one use. Another is that a lot of athletes in the United States, they like to look stylish with the fashion, but they don't need the glass because they don't need it for their eyesight, but they like to look good. So they'll wear glasses without lenses. So there's two products. And so, or if I said, okay, let's subtract the frame, I would say, do I have a product? I just have lenses. Well, if you shrink them down, you have contact lenses. So now I have a product. So that's what I do with humor, is that all of my humor comes from using that system. So for example, if I'm writing about a plane, I might say, okay, take away the wings, take away the pilot, take away the seats. What do I have? Do I have something funny? And so all my jokes now come from this systematic inventive thinking, which was created by a team in Israel. And so it's how nowadays I don't need to rely on my memories at all. I only rely on this system, and it gives me all of the material I need. So long answer to your short question.
Thank you so much. I'm glad I asked that question.
Sure.
I know you have another interview coming up. So thank you once again from the bottom of our hearts, on behalf of all the children all over the world, and particularly the YES platform, for giving us yet one more session, which was as fun-filled as it was educational. So it was a good learning, fun-filled learning experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bijlani. And thank you, Priya, for brokering this connection. I hope you have a great rest of your night. Take care.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I'm
Thanks
connecting.
everybody who watched.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Love you.
Participants, the recording of this session will be published on the YouTube channel, Yes Spirituality. We have dropped the link to the channel in the chat box. Please do visit the channel. Thank you.
So, Priya,
Anji,
was
sir.
there nice to see you again.